The greatest leaders in business look for the emerging stories in their organization and use the data to choose their preferred outcome. What outcome do you want in your business? Listen to the stories of industry veterans, coaches, and consultants so you can choose your preferred business outcome. Hi, everyone. This is Vinay Raman, and welcome to a brand new podcast of Business Blind Spots Exposed. Today, I'm really excited about what we're going to be talking about. There's lots of really interesting dimensions that I think you're going to get to learn about, which brings me to why we do the business. Well, I do the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. And it started really from a personal place. I used to think it was all about being really smart. And I used to read so many books and always think I could keep gathering more and more information. But then at one point in time, I figured out I can't learn fast enough to keep up with everyone else in the world. So how do I get smarter, but I don't have to keep reading a book? And I realized other people's perspective is how I can do that. It's like a whole treasure chest opened up to me. And I started learning from others. And what I actually learned from that is it's actually not about me learning everything. It's about me understanding what other people do so well. I can lean into their expertise and their experience. That actually makes me more powerful. So Business Blind Spots Exposed is all about finding those things that, honestly, there's things I don't know a lot about. And I find the business, the coaches, the consultants, the people who've been there and done that, they've got the cuts, bruises, and scars to help me level up my thinking and hopefully yours as well. So first, I'd like to welcome Elzie. Elzie, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic. I'm excited about this conversation.
Yeah, me too. I think there's a lot of different things I'd like to dig into. But Elzie, I want to tell them a little bit about you, but I want to do a little bit of housekeeping here and tell everyone what's coming up in the next couple of weeks on the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. So on 12/21, I got Dr. Holly Sullinger. The topic is storytelling from the data, a practical approach. So many people talk about data these days. So many people talk about storytelling. Are they two different things? Are they the same thing? Gosh, there's so much information out there. Holly's going to come in. I love talking to Holly because she just gets data so well. And she's one of those people when she talks about data, it just comes out naturally. It flows. I think you really enjoy this conversation. If you're kind of conflicted about how do I take the data and turn it into action, you should listen into this. On December 16th, I've got Craig Matthews, and the topic is building a leadership development ecosystem. Have you ever heard the phrase, build leaders within your company, and it actually start to expand faster? That's what Craig's going to spend some time talking about, is how do you get into that mindset or that heart set, which is the word I like to use from now on. How do you get into that heart set? Well, you start building leaders because that rising tide lifts all boats. That's what Craig's going to be talking to us about. But today I get Elzie Flenard, and we're going to be talking about master your craft and level up. I want to give you a little bit of an intro to Elzie because I want to get started here. I think there's a lot from Elzie to read. So I'm going to read a little bit from the bio here. And I love the way we kind of got to some of this verbiage here. Don't pigeonhole Elzie D. Flenard III. Don't even try. Describe him here this way, and he'll point out that that's not the way to go. Change your perspective and he'll lead you down another path, maybe without you even realizing it. Creative guy, entrepreneur, family man, business owner. I love this part. No box fits. It just doesn't exist. He's a man of original thoughts, and it's all a product of his unique thinking. And what I hear in all that is just this idea that Elzie's constantly challenging his own perspective. He's challenging other people's perspective. And if you've heard any of my podcasts, you know I believe perspective means everything. Elzie, did I do you some justice there and kind of characterizing a little bit who you are?
Yes, that is awesome.
So tell me about this. There's no box that fits. I loved out of that whole thing that was written there about who you are, the no box fits part really resonated the most with me. Tell me more about that. Why do you say that no box fits?
Well, because a lot of Vinay about business and life is about pushing the envelope. It's about being your true authentic self, right? And doing things because they give you joy, right? Which sort of flies in the face of the whole, you have to be a 6-figure, 7-figure, 12-figure entrepreneur and all that. I mean, that's great for those who that's what does it for them. But for me, it's all about really honing in on what gives me joy, what excites me, what inspires me, and doing that more. Because at the end of the day, we're all here for a very, very short time. And I intend on maximizing every second. And so I think that perspective, right, of not even imagining myself in a box, right, allows me to live my life both personally and in business in a way that's different and unique.
Yeah. So I love this because I'm going to tell you a little bit about. I have 3 kids, and my poor kids have to listen to me and my leadership trainings and topics and thoughts all the time. Hopefully, I'll lead to somewhere good for them. But one of the things that I tell them all the time is they love reading, and I've gotten them to build this innate curiosity about everything. Just ask, 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 ask. I feel like we breed that out of people sometimes. And I asked them, I said, every time you read a book, a page in a book, consider that it took 10,000 hours of time just to make that one page, right? How many hours does it take for a whole book? And how many books have you read? There's so much there. Now, what is written on each one of those pages, those 10,000 hours, is someone else defining their own box. That was an experience that they went through. So if you use that as your definition of yourself, you might be limiting yourself. Well, it's actually not even an accurate statement there. That's a box for someone else, not for yourself. How does that resonate with you?
I think that's everything, right? Comparison, I talk about it all the time, is the key to being unhappy and unsuccessful. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people are comparing their lives, their businesses with other people, and it just never works. It's a never ending journey of discovering that you're never going to compete or be someone else, which is kind of the point, because you're unique, you're different, your journey is special and different. So I think embracing that really allows you to grow at a faster rate than if you're taking, for example, if I take my business and I compare it to a podcast agency that has been around for 12 years. It's not fair to me, because your year 4 is going to be different than their year 12. And so I think, again, having that perspective and really seeing things that way helps you grow in the way that you're supposed to grow in your unique way.
So there's one word that you used in there, is fair. And this is a word I kind of push back on my kids a little bit sometimes when they say, hey, Dad, that's not fair. Not to do anything outside of this sense of, I think digging a little further into what you're saying here is, fair is a very subjective term, right? And what is fair and what is a definition for some? Well, let me put it this way. My 2 kids are fighting. They've got an argument about it. Both of them have got a different definition of the word fair is, right?
Yes.
Each person has got their own definition. So I think what I'm hearing, maybe if I can read between the lines here, is what you think is fair in your life is completely different than someone else's. So figure out your own definition. Does that make sense?
Yes. I am notorious for not necessarily gravitating or holding to what a word in Webster says, because at some point, some person sat down and said, this is what this word means. And so what's to say that I can't come along in 2021 and say, well, no, it means this. You know what I mean? So just thinking outside of the fact that, at some point, somebody made it up and then other people agreed. And so if that changes, then that's a plausible direction. So, most people, when they look at things that are written in books and things like that, they take it as law. But again, at some point, some person sat down and decided that this was what their experience told them, and they wrote it down and other people agreed. And so there's nothing to say that your experience might tell you something different, and that whatever that term or thought or idea is can now be shifted because of your unique and personal perspective or experience.
Well, so this is interesting because one thing I heard in there is, sometimes what people read in a book, they take as law. And gosh, maybe you and I are just cut from a very similar cloth, but just because I read it in the newspaper, it's not that I'm interested in being the contrarian so much as I'm just looking at saying, so how did they arrive at that? What was that process for getting there? I mean, I'm not picking a side here because this could be a potentially hot topic for a lot of people, but just the COVID vaccine, right? All these vaccines that have come out, 95% is a number that was put out there. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but there's a lot that goes into that number, right? And there's some people who will just take that number 95%. Hey, it's a black and white. Well, it's not a black and white. It's actually 95%, which is not 100%, right? Does that resonate with you? Just kind of this idea of, hey, let's not just take what people tell us, what's written in a book, what's written from a study, and just say, internalize it a little bit and say, do we kind of align with it? And it's okay not to be 100% alignment. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, and I think too, just seeing things through a perspective other than your own. I think leading with empathy, right? And really understanding that just because you see it this way doesn't mean that other people see it the same way. And number one, that's okay. It's okay to disagree. Doesn't mean that I hate you. Doesn't mean that we can't, be friends. Just simply means we disagree. I think that's actually healthy. So I think being objective and also having the added perspective that disagreeing and seeing things differently is okay, I think will help us to get to resolutions more efficiently. Maybe not faster, but more efficiently, because at least I understand where you're coming from. Right. And so my buy-in doesn't necessarily come from just how it affects me, how I feel, how I see it, but I'm also filtering that through what others might see and how it might affect them.
So something that comes to mind is something that's been kind of a hot topic, at least here in the United States, politically, is sort of Biden Trump. And again, I'm not picking a side here. But one thing that I did do is I went to a bunch of people who said that they were Trump supporters. I went to a bunch of people who were Biden supporters. And I said to the Trump folks, I said, can you tell me one thing good that Joe Biden has done? And I went to the people who were Biden supporters and said, hey, could you tell me one good thing that Trump has done? And I will tell you, they had a lot of difficulty telling me that, right? I didn't get a lot of free flowing answers. Let me put it that way, right? And I said to them, so look, as an adult, I say children get to live in this domain of good and bad, right? They see Superman and there's Lex Luthor. One is good, one is bad, and it's 100%, right? As an adult, I very rarely see black and whites like that. It's usually, I call it the 63% right. It's a little more majority, but it's not overwhelmingly that way. So I said to them, is it possible that there are some things good about Joe Biden or some things good about Donald Trump? Still not picking a side here. Just simply saying, is it possible, even 1% possible, that there's something that they've done that's well? And some of them would completely disagree. Others said, yeah, maybe. I said, well, then how can you truly understand it if you just don't look enough to see what they've done well? And I think that's a little bit of what I'm hearing from you, sort of paraphrasing, maybe repeating back to you another way. Mm-hmm. Are we in alignment there?
Yeah, for sure. I think, again, having the perspective of it is whatever the topic is, right? You talk politics, you talk about the COVID vaccine. Are there truths, are there points that that point to people should get vaccinated, right? And not being so married to how you feel, how it affects you, right? And I think that's when you look at our society as a whole, that's how you can have some parts of a city that have almost zero violence, and other parts of cities that are very violent. And it's because people don't see things through the eyes of others because it doesn't affect them, or so they don't think, or they can't see on a large enough level where they know that it actually does affect them. Right. And I think that causes us to have this myopic view on things and prevents us from being able to come to to the table and figure out solutions, because we're so focused on how we feel, how it affects us, and not as much concerned of, how it affects the whole.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, and I want to make a correlation here, right? Because we've been talking about topics being able to lean into some understanding. I'll talk about this idea of empathy being sort of this internal feeling, right? This internal seeking to understand, and compassion is how you outwardly express that empathy and that understanding. Podcasting, right? I mean, I do this podcast because I'm truly seeking to understand, at least I believe I'm seeking to understand others' points of view. Podcasting is what you do. You help a lot of people talk through and understand how to be better podcasters. Tell me a little more about that and what that journey is, because that's all about expressing opinions, isn't it?
Absolutely. And ironically, podcasting, most people think about it, they think about talking or being able to express your thoughts and broadcast your voice. But the number one skill in podcasting is actually listening. It's actually being able to read body language, to read inflections, to read tone, to understand what people are saying, even when they're not saying it, right? So it's a lot of nonverbal and things that you wouldn't normally think of when you think of podcasting. And so that's the thing that I love most about it, is because I get to continue to learn. Everybody has a different style. Everybody has a different approach. And I get to help people discover that and to take them on that journey, whether it's for a hobby or if it's for their business, right? Understanding who are we talking to? How should we talk to them? What's our message? What resonates? What doesn't? How do we move them to action? How do we listen to them? What is our feedback loop? Those types of things are really life skills if you think about it. Whether you're a Fortune 500 CEO or if you're a first line leader, those are all things that you need to develop if you want to be successful.
So, look, as a person, as the CEO of a company, the message of what I do with my company, and I'm trying to kind of loop this all together so people can kind of see the thread, the through line, and all of this stuff. That is, I take data and I help them build narratives and stories out of it, right? Because the data is not enough by itself. The story is not enough by itself. The two of them together make the human being. And what is amazing to me is that you're talking to me about this idea of podcasting and listening being that key element. And in order to be able to see the data and be able to see the story, you need to be able to listen as the key element. Is that a coincidence that the through line from all this stuff is listening more than you're talking?
No, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's a resounding foundational wake up call, right? For any leader or any person who wants to help drive people to success. It's not as much about how smart, how brilliant, and how articulate you are, but it's all about how well you can motivate people to be their best.
Yeah. I actually was just in the process of creating a post that I'm going to be putting out there on LinkedIn in terms of how you can use this, how you can be more effective as a leader. And the first thing it says is understand what is first, right? Where are you standing, right? And so I'm going to try to translate to how I see the world and kind of what you're seeing in podcasting, the podcasting world. And you tell me if there's some similarities and some alignment here, right? First, you got to understand where you are so that you can ask the question. And once you ask the question, is that the right question to ask? Are you paying attention? Are you truly seeking to understand? Or are you trying to project? Because I think a lot of people, when I talk to them, I've been doing this for 25 years. I know what the answer is. Well, why are you having a conversation then? You can lead yourself anywhere then, but you just can't lead others, right? And once you've heard that from the other person, and you have that, that's when you can start to go to a better place. Do you feel like that that resonates at all with kind of the secret sauce to podcasting?
Yeah, I think there's some elements to truth to that. I'm a big fan of I hate the word expert. I hate when people say that Elzie is an expert and Elzie can show you how to do it, but because we're all iterating.
Yeah.
You know, what worked last year doesn't work this year. What worked yesterday may not work today. But I always pride myself on being teachable, being coachable, because I think the best leaders are the best followers, the ones who can learn from anyone. It doesn't matter if you have 0 years of experience or 75. There's something that you can learn from everyone. And I think when you take that posture, you set yourself up to be a great leader, because now you understand what it's like to learn, and you're not always in the position of people seeking to learn from you. And even when you're teaching, you're learning. And I think those are the most effective leaders.
That's really funny. I just had a conversation with um, one of the people on my team. I actually call them my experts because they know something that I don't know. So I talked to one of my team members today. She actually is in Kenya, so I'll probably, I hope one day I get a chance to meet with her. But I talk to her every day, and she's in Kenya. So look, the whole relationship is built completely online, and I spend a fair bit of time with her, and just like everyone else, talking about them and understanding them and helping them build greater awareness of themselves. She sent me a note on Slack right after we finished. She said, "Vinay, thank you so much. That was a incredible session. I don't feel like we did actually any work, but I just got so much realization about myself." I smiled and I wrote back and I said, "You don't know how much I got out of that." Just being in that opportunity to walk someone through a process, you learn so much. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing from you is, and I love this here, we are all iterating. That, how true that is. Anyone who says I've got it all figured out, BS.
Mm-hmm.
Is that about how you feel?
That you nailed it. I mean, each one of us we're learning every single day. And the moment when you think you have it figured out, you begin to decline.
So talk to me about podcasting, right? What is the process? I mean, there's lots of people who've got podcasts. Podcasts have been surging a lot in recent years. I think they're just becoming more and more popular. Why? Why do it? Why do people want to do it?
I think it's two things. The thing that attracted me to podcasting, it was sort of on accident, it was what I wanted, when I wanted, how I wanted it. It's right to the point, no fluff, and it was giving me value. I think more and more people want what they want, when they want, and how they want it. People are very busy. And I think the culture shift that's happening is very relational. Ironically, we're doing more and more virtually. So people are craving connection and relationship even more than before. And podcasting really is a very potent way to develop and build those relationships. And so I think people gravitate to the authenticity, to the passion, and to the relational qualities of podcasting.
Well, hold on a second. So everyone talks to me about Zoom fatigue, right? I've been online all day, and I can't wait to go back. I mean, not everyone's saying this, but some contingent of people, I got to go back in person because you just can't build relationships over the wire. I'd love to hear your opinion. I don't think that's true. I actually feel like I've gotten really good at building relationships. I mean, we've just been talking for a couple of minutes. I feel like I've learned a tremendous amount about you already. Are you in the same page there? Do you see it the same way? Please differ if you disagree.
Yeah, I think that there are levels of relationship.
Okay.
I call them 2D and 3D. But I think what virtual has allowed us to do is to widen our net, so to speak. So I can talk to someone who is in LA, I could talk to someone who's in South Africa and in London, all in the same day. I can't do that in 3D, right? The relationships are different, not better, not worse, just different. And I think going back to our earlier point, and that's okay. It's okay that you have virtual level relationships, and you have the types of relationships that you can only foster in person. I think that that's an added benefit and a plus to technology and the next level of relationship. I think that virtual is not going anywhere. I think that augmented reality and audio and video is all going to be a really eclectic mix of how we build relationships in the future. My son, for example, I don't know that he'll go to a quarter of the in-person meetings that I went to in my life. And that's okay. Not better, not worse, just different. And so I think, again, embracing that, right? We're talking about the box and not fitting in it and all that. It again, it's not better, not worse, just different. And I've learned that when you are open to that and you leverage it, it only adds value.
So who is a good candidate to be a podcaster? How do you know that you're ready?
The best way I can answer this question is to ask you a question in response. Is sort of like having a child.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when are you ready to have a child? And most parents, and I don't know this, I haven't done the research to get this data. I know you're a data guy, but I would venture to say a large percentage of parents would say you're never really ready, right? They don't come with manuals. You have a few of them and they're all different. And it just really just depends. So you're never really ready. You just have to resolve that you want to do it, understand why you want to do it, right? And then just do it and learn and grow and iterate as you go. I teased my oldest daughter. I was like, I really don't know what I'm doing. Just kind of making this up as I go. Hopefully I'm doing a great job. You're a great kid, so I think I'm going in the right direction. But similarly, right, in podcasting, you don't know, right, until you try, until you really understand that maybe you have a passion, or there's a subject that you really love and you want to reach out and you want to connect with people. I think that is the nucleus of success. Outside of quality, outside of marketing, all that stuff is a part of it, right? But at the heart of it, it's about passion, being authentic, and being willing to not be as good as you're gonna be. I'm a better dad today than I was when I first had my daughter, right? Because I really didn't know. I didn't know what to expect, right? But now, I've had some reps in some years, right? She's 14. And so there's some things that I know now that I didn't know then. So podcasting is the same way. When you first start, you're not going to know what you're doing. But as you get experience, you learn and you grow and you get better.
And Nike nailed it when they said just do it, right?
Just do it.
It just resonates. And so, that's been my experience. I don't know, maybe 100 podcasts in at this point in time. I feel like I've gone a long way where I was at the beginning and where I am today. I am so much more fluid. Build it bad first and then make it better. It's kind of what someone told me once.
Yeah.
But this idea of having a purpose, having a core mission, or having a directive, I think what I'm hearing from you is those kind of details. You kind of figure them out as you start asking yourself. You're going to naturally improve in a direction that is amenable to you anyway. Is that a fair way to state that?
I think so. I think it's always good to plan as much as you can. Okay. But don't let the planning slow you down from starting. Okay. I would say, if you can have a solid strategy on how you're going to promote it, and the production and quality, all those things are great, and those are a part of the process. But I always tell people, don't let those things stop you from starting.
Yeah, and I think people kind of get wrapped up in the details. What kind of equipment do I need? Do I need this microphone? Do I need these headphones? There's 10,000 different ways you can do it and potentially do it right. But that's what you do, right? Is help people walk through that whole process and figure out, based on your budget and where you want to start and what you want to do. That's what you can help them figure out. So if they can come to you for that expertise in terms of how to get started, how to start moving down that path and just start paddling down the river, what purposes can they use podcasts for? Is podcasting only for external purposes? It could be used internally. What have you seen?
Yeah, some organizations are using them for internal communication, right? We talked about how things are changing, right? I don't know that we'll ever go back to 100% in-office work. I think that the virtual remote work is kind of here to stay. And so a podcast could sort of be the bridge between, really communicating your values, things that are happening in the organization, communicating the heart of the organization to internal employees via a podcast. And externally, really, again, starting to build and foster those relationships and positioning your brand in a way that that gains you trust and authority.
Gosh, just as soon as you're saying that, I was thinking, just as soon as you said internally, there's a really large organization that we're thinking of working with, and they've got tens of thousands of employees. And we're going to be doing some data analysis and behavioral analysis for some of their employees and their leaders and things. Just the idea of maybe suggesting to them at some point in time, hey, let's go through this together so people can start to see what you're seeing as a leader. Because if you start to be a little more transparent with people, then you start to create greater trust. And I think I got to imagine that's sort of a through line on the whole idea of podcasting, right? If you start talking from here and not here, people start leaning into it more, saying, all right, it's just the words that you choose and the level of commitment and passion that you speak with just comes naturally more just flow state. Is that a fair way to state that?
Yeah, for sure. And the fact that people can hear your voice, it's different than them reading an email that you sent, or even being on a conference call, right? It's almost like you're talking directly to them, and that's extremely impactful.
So, someone wants to get started in this world of podcasting. Is that the sort of the best customer for you? Is that the kind of people that you usually like to work with first? What do they look like? The people that you want to work with?
People that we love to work with are people who are forward thinking, okay, people who want to leverage new media to build trust, build authority, and grow their influence, and people who are coachable. I said earlier, being coachable is extremely important, both as a leader and as a follower. And so I found that people who are coachable are easier to coach than people that are not. So those are sort of the attributes of people that we like to work with.
How do people just know if they're easy to coach?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know that uncoachable people know that they're uncoachable. I think that they tend to not have the perspective where they're self-reflective. They tend to say, well, it's everybody's fault but mine that every team that I go to ends up imploding. Right? It's always somebody else's fault or reason or an external factor. I think inherently people who are coachable are self-aware. They understand that, hey, I probably didn't handle that situation the best way, or maybe I was right, but the way I presented my correctness wasn't the best for the team, right? So I think coachable people tend to have this self-awareness, this self-reflection, that people who are not coachable simply don't have.
So if let's assume for a moment someone is coachable, as in there is that innate humility that they're comfortable sitting in, right? Then there's probably a level of inquisitiveness or introspection that they're also comfortable with, right? Which means that if they want to grow their influence, they know inherently some of the value that they provide that they believe will be of value to someone else. So where I'm going in this thought process is, I think that's probably where people jump to next is, all right, I have this message. Everyone needs to hear this. That's not the case, right? Not everyone needs to hear it. I don't need to be telling teenage boys about how to do breastfeeding. They're probably not going to watch.
Yes.
Right? Maybe, but probably not a lot of them. So there's an audience. If you know what your message is and you're kind of open to the idea that I know what it is, I'm willing to get better, make it worse, make it bad, make it better. That actually kind of makes you somewhat of that forward thinker. So it's almost kind of like this continuum, sort of these dominoes that fall. Is that the right way to think of it? Yes,
absolutely. And I think for me, a lot of that happens when you start to have conversations with people, right? They'll say things like, I have this experience or this life experience or this wisdom that I've gained, and I want to pay it forward. I want to share with people to save them the struggle or the time that it took me to get there, right? So they're already thinking outside of themselves, right? And so those types of people are connectable. When you hear their story, when you hear their message, you connect with it, and you like to listen to more of their content, and you buy things when they refer to them. So that really makes for a great connectability.
Gotcha. Lots of wheels spinning in my head here. Somebody else wants to, what are the other things that come to your mind? What are the other types of questions that people should ask you if they wanted to get into podcasting? I mean, I got to tell you, I'm kind of drawing the blank here because there's lots of I'm just sort of unpacking mentally all the stuff you just said and how all the dots connect. So I'm almost giving you a filler here. What are the questions that people ask you about podcasting?
Well, I'm fielding a lot of the basic questions still, like how long should it be?
Okay.
How often should we release? Is anybody going to listen? Those types of questions. And I think partly that's because the industry is still maturing. Okay. If I had to say, if we're in blue versus red ocean, I think we're still blue ocean, especially on the enterprise side, because businesses tend to be 4 to 5, sometimes 6 years behind trends a lot of times, because oftentimes they're business people, right? We know what works. We've been doing this for X amount of years. We don't want to change. So I think we're still blue ocean that way. I think as things progress and the industry gets more crowded, it's going to be more and more important to really, as I said, have that connectability, right? You look at music, for example. I am a sort of a singer-songwriter, and I know singers who can sing, they hit every note, they can do all the runs and all the fancy stuff, but they don't connect to their audience. I know some singers who they don't sing that well, but there's just something about them. Entertainment calls it the it factor. It's what I call connectability. There's just something about them, something about their message, something about their story that resonates. That's going to become more and more important in podcasting, just as it has in music. It's going to be about, how do you connect? How do you show up in an authentic way? How do you take people on that journey in a way that allows them to see themselves in your journey, right? It's going to be more about, how do you articulate and communicate that message and that story. And so I think that's where having a great coach comes in, is because a good coach or strategist can look at your story and say, well, I don't know, Vinay, there's some things I think that you should dig deeper here on, or maybe not go as much over here, or maybe release it a little bit quicker here. So I think those are the finer points that, as we progress, businesses and enterprises are going to want to start paying more attention to.
So a coach and strategist can help refine that message out to the world, right?
Yes.
Well, I want to. There's one thing I want to do. As a company, I'm always looking at the data. That's the company I run. We're always looking at data to understand what's happening with people, and we've touched a little bit on the people. And I think it's a little distance apart between what you do and kind of what we do. But I think there's that through line still of sort of that listening and that being. I don't want to say inquisition, but being inquisitive, right? I'd like to bring some graphs up on a screen here, and I'd love to see how you read the story, because this whole idea of storytelling, and I think that's one thing, as soon as we come back, I'd like to talk a little more about that storytelling, because I believe storytelling, being able to see the data, which I think as a coach, you see the data, right, as far as what's happening, but being able to see the story and help someone understand the story, and helps you understand what to do next, the next best question. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, for sure.
So I want to share my screen here, and I want to talk through this. And I would love to hear a little more sort of about your storytelling. Maybe we can kind of tune this a little bit to kind of the podcasting world. We've got some metrics and KPIs here, but I'd love to hear how you kind of see it as well. So let me share my screen here. All right. Can you see what I have on screen here?
Yes.
I'm actually going to go down to a different employee. So now this is for I'm we've got a bunch of employees that we've put data on. So this one is Chris. Let me zoom out a little bit here so you can kind of see Chris. And what we did is we took some data from a company and we made a visualization of it. And part of the reason for doing this is I always love hearing what kind of goes through people's minds as they see this, right? Because to me, this whole idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion is a really important topic. The idea of being a better leader is a really important topic. But I think all of these things are actually the same thing. There's a through line. It all begins with this listening, not only just to the external world, but also to yourself, right? So got this employee named Chris, and it's actually based on real data, just not really a Chris. And I called Chris the eager employee. They've been a technician. They've been an employee for 6 months. So they create a good amount of revenue per hour, and they happen to drive a vehicle for this company to do their services, and they accelerate safely. So they're conscientious in that acceleration piece, but they don't see as many customers as they should. I'm going to scroll forward a little bit here, and I'm going to drill a little bit into the data here, right? Because I think you'll see the story emerge. We walked through a little bit of this in the beginning. When you see this, what kind of story emerges for you about Chris? What do you see just painting this story?
Well, I mean, just looking at the data, I mean, she's productive, she's safe, but there's a noticeable issue or challenge with the actual stops, right? So a lot of things come to my mind as a hopefully good leader. What comes up to me is she's unsure. She needs training. She needs support. She needs
coaching.
Yes.
and one thing I did is I actually kind of skipped over. I didn't actually give everyone a chance to understand sort of this whole graph. So let me do a quick overview of that. The blue area is based on the data that comes in. The blue area is how Chris is actually performing. That whole area is her, him or her, right? The best case scenario would be that blue fills up that whole circle. So it's completely blue. Well, the fact is that no such thing as an imperfect employee exists. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. So if you'll take a look at the middle, that's a 0 on a test, and out to the edge is 100. The red line is the 20th percentile, so you got a 20 on that test out of 100. This black line is what the average person did on the test, average employee has done on that test. The green line is what I'll call the B or better, right? They've done relatively well. They've got the B's and the A's in the test. So on the safe braking dimension, we're measuring how often Chris brakes and how often Chris brakes hard, or how often Chris accelerates hard. You can see that they've done really well in those dimensions. And also this revenue or the production that they're creating per hour is actually pretty high. For someone who's 6 months into the company, this is actually, I don't think this is a bad place to be, right? Is that the way you see it as well?
Yes, I think if I were looking at her as first 6 months, I would say, solid, right? But it's identified to us, right? There's some opportunity for improvement. But if we can get those actual stops up and, improve the production per hour and the per mile, then we're looking at a stellar employee. So, out of, 3 out of the 4 points. So I would say solid. I would maybe, if I'm the boss's boss, have some conversations with her direct leader just to make sure that that we're both on the same page with, the fact that, hey, this is an employee, a teammate that has tons of potential, but just needs support.
So I want to connect some dots here in terms of what you do with podcasting, because none of these KPIs and metrics are directly related to the podcasting industry, right? I mean, there's lots of metrics within podcasting. I mean, number of people who are listening to, how long they've listened to, they listen to it in a video format, to listen to it a audio format. Which platform do they use? iTunes? Do they use, Apple Podcasts, Google, or, Stitcher, Deezer, whatever. There's so many of them. Mm-hmm. What particular topics, right? Keywords. There's lots of data. Sifting through that all is a tough thing to do. Being able to distill it and create a story like this, do you see that being able to distill that adds value? Because I feel like the story is what a lot of people miss. I mean, that's what you as a coach have the benefit of being able to do. Is that a fair point?
For sure. I had a client conversation with a client yesterday actually, and we were talking about the fact that she hasn't even looked at her numbers, at her downloads.
Okay.
But she has tripled they run these clinics where they're coaching people, and they have tripled since she launched her podcast, and she doesn't even look at her download numbers. And so we took a peek and we started to look at some of the areas where people are downloading, some of the cities and how long they're listening and things like that. And my comment to her was, okay, now we can either fine tune our messaging even further so that we're getting the value add so fine tuned and so potent that your existing listeners are gonna love you, because now they're getting more of what you're already giving them, and now you're starting to attract those people from the peripherals because you're adding continued value to a very targeted listener. And so data it definitely can tell a story, and it can guide and inform the decisions that you make as a podcaster, for sure.
So being able to see, I mean, the way I think of this is I call this a behavior graph, right? This is for an employee. By the same way, if you had that data and you could start to, I mean, I think this is what you do for people is you take those data and kind of say, so here's the story that's starting to spell out. And as the coach here, you can take a look at that, whatever that's equivalent to downloads or actual stops made. You can say, here's where you need to start to pay attention in time. Is that a fair way to say that?
Mm-hmm. For sure. I would even, for example, I would say this organization might even benefit from an internal podcast, right? That talks about the subject of stops, how to have an efficient stop. What are some challenges that other people have had when they're not quite hitting the mark with actual stops? Maybe telling the story of former employees that started out at 20 but increased to 70 or 80, right? Really making that connection between, hey, there are people who have been where you are and here's how they got to where they are.
Interesting. So then, I mean, it's almost like an internal podcast with guest speakers, as in people who are doing well in some dimensions. Like, how did you get there? What does your day look like? And having them talk through that so you can memorialize some of those lessons. I mean, it becomes training that now you can also scale that training too, because you say, hey, I think you need to go listen to episode 338.
Exactly. Right. Right.
Interesting.
And you're building that connection, right, between Chris and whoever that other employee is. So now maybe that's an opportunity for mentorship or a friendship that will come out of that.
Well, I'm gonna stop this because I love seeing how people receive this and kind of what the message that they hear here. Well, Elzie, I got to say, I feel like I've learned a tremendous amount about podcasting, and kind of that there's this deeper, the word I use is through line, in terms of being able to listen as being what allows you to become this good podcaster, right? And a prospect that you like, I think, has a lot of these traits, right? They want to be able to grow their influence. They are a forward thinker. They're easy to coach. So they have this self-awareness. They have this desire to share some of what they know. If someone wanted to take a step forward and either engage with you or just kind of step into podcasting himself, what are the first one or two things that you would ask them to consider doing?
I would say email me, because I am always open to answering questions and helping people get started on their journey. The second thing I would do is just take a visit on our website. We have a lot of information on there, articles and things like that that speak to how to get started and things to consider.
Okay. Well, anybody who has listened in, I hope you've gotten a bunch of nuggets like I have from Elzie today. Feel free to reach out to him when we post it on LinkedIn or Facebook and YouTube. You will have all the links to Elzie. You can get in touch with him or just reach out to me or my team, and we'll be more than happy to put you in touch with him. I really enjoyed listening to him. I hope you really did. So thank you for listening in. Elzie, thank you for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.